Okay, hello there everyone and welcome to today's University Business web seminar. It's great to have you all with us here today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kurt Eisler-Durley. I'm the magazine's web seminar editor and research editor, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. The title of our event here, as you see here in front of you, is Modernizing Administrative Workflows in Higher Education, and is being brought to you through the generous support of our sponsor for today, Ricoh. Before we get started, I'll start with a bit of background about our topic for today. While faced with state and federal regulations, an increasingly competitive recruitment environment, and intense pressure to contain costs, many colleges and universities have been unable to modernize critical business processes, which could help address some key challenges in admissions, finance, and fundraising. Siloed data, manual processes, and inefficient workflows can be costly, create security vulnerabilities, and prevent institution leaders from understanding the true costs of doing business. Today we'll be discussing the results of a recent University Business survey of higher ed executive leaders relating to these common challenges, and we'll also take a look at some ways to address these challenges by digitizing information and automating workflows. We're looking forward to a very interesting presentation and discussion here, so do stay tuned. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. But before we do, just some brief housekeeping notes here for you. If you're having any trouble listening through your computer speakers, or if you prefer to listen over the telephone, you may have noticed we have posted the phone number and access code in the chat panel that you should see at the middle right margin of your screen there. You can dial those to get audio access over the phone if you need it. If you're having any problems with your computer audio, anything like that, just dial those numbers and you'll get the audio over the phone. Speaking of that chat panel, you can also use that to send a message to our host and producer. Her name is Ashley Morgan. Just choose her name there if you're having any technical problems. And send her a message in that chat window there, and she'll help you out. If you have a question for our speaker or myself today, you can feel free to enter it in the Q&A box, the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there. You can enter it at any time while we're going through the presentation here. We'll answer as many questions as possible when we get to the end of the event here. So again, if you do have a question, feel free to ask it at any time. Just type it in that Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there. Also, we'll be making the slide deck available if you want to download, go through it at your own pace, share with anyone at your institution or any of your colleagues, and we'll also make the archive recording available as well if you want to go back over it or share with anyone on your team. But I'll tell you more about that a little bit later on. So with that, on to our program here today. We're fortunate to have with us, in addition to myself, I'll be going through the survey results here. We're also joined by Ben Ruck. He is Senior Manager for Higher Education at Ricoh. Ben, before we get into the survey here, just invite you to say hello to our audience here.
Hey, hello everyone. Good afternoon.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ben. Now, just by way of agenda here, I'm going to go through the survey, start off with some introduction about our survey, and go through the survey results. It's about 9 questions or data points, and then Ben will give us sort of his take on each of those. And then Ben will get to some very interesting case studies there after the survey data that illustrate some of the issues and challenges that we're talking about. So with that, on to our survey. First, tell you a little bit about our survey here. University Business and Ricoh partnered to develop this survey, exploring some of the challenges related to administrative workflows and business processes in higher ed. So we worked together with Ricoh to develop the questions for this survey. And this was deployed at the end of May, so just a few weeks ago, to a certain segment of the UB audience in executive management, business, finance, and IT professionals from the University Business subscriber audience. And we received about 246 responses, so we were very pleased with that. And they came from a diversity of institutions here, which I'll get into next here. Just a little about our respondents, just by way of background. A good mix here between four-year public, four-year private, and two-year institutions. And we also selected mainly just medium to larger institutions, so above 5,000 students. You can see 5,000 to 10,000 enrollment was our biggest demographic here, but we also had a good percentage from 10 to 15, and even larger, more than a quarter, from over 15,000 students. So in short, a good mix of types of institutions, size of institution, a good diversity of respondents responded to our survey. So with that, I'll get to the questions here, and we're going to go through these questions. Each one is basically an agree or disagree statement. And it's pretty interesting to see how people responded to each of these topics. So here's the first statement. Our current application process includes automated document workflows, helping to minimize administrative time and processing costs. Okay, so we're talking about the application process here and workflows, document workflows specifically. So here's how they responded. Pretty significant majority here saying they agree at their institution that their application process includes these automated document workflows. But we have here more than a quarter of folks from institutions saying they disagree, that their application process does not have these automated workflows. Ben, what's your take on that? A pretty significant percentage of people using this in the application process. How do these results strike you, Ben?
Well, Kurt, I would say I think that a lot of the online application services that are out there, some are homegrown, others like the common application that's used in improving the process. But what we're seeing is, where historically paper documents would be submitted, a lot of times a student can submit those electronically with their online application, so things like their SAT scores or referral letter, things of that nature. But oftentimes there are other requirements as part of the application process that can't necessarily, maybe the student doesn't have them in electronic format, so those documents often make their way to the university in the form of paper. So that paper has to be, sorted by the general mail staff. So it generally comes into the general mail address, distributed to admissions where, documents are then opened, information extracted and manually keyed into a database. So there are still a lot of clunky processes out there with applications. Now, in addition, there's some other technologies that are out there that are trying to get this information into electronic format quicker upstream other than online applications. So, for example, there's a technology out there being largely utilized called Parchment that has digitized transcripts, so they'll come into admissions electronically. But what we're hearing from our customers and clients is that much of this data is coming in an unstructured format. So it basically has to be, in many cases, printed and then manually keyed into the application, line of business application again. So those are the things that we're seeing.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm just going to keep it moving here so we can get through everything. Next statement here. Again, agree or disagree. Our existing document workflows provide sufficient security to safeguard student and employee personal and financial information. Certainly security, very important to a lot of institutions, and so perhaps it doesn't come as much of a surprise to say pretty overwhelming majority here saying they agree, more than 80%, while there's right around 15 15 to 18% or so saying they disagreed. Clearly, security is not sufficient at those institutions. Ben, again, how does this strike you, these results, security of this type of information? Very, very important, and it seems like that was reflected here in the survey. Security is taken very seriously when you talk about the information contained in these documents. Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. Document security is definitely paramount to all colleges and universities. I think the challenge with security is that in the admissions processing, a lot of this information that's coming into the organization is done seasonally. So because of this vast amount of content, either paper or electronic, often the admissions departments have to bring in either temporary employees, maybe other university staff, or even student labor to help process this information, extract it, and input into the admissions line of business application. So it's harder it's more difficult to secure that environment when you don't have consistency of staff.
Sure. Sounds like a common challenge and certainly a serious concern for many institutions. Okay, next statement here. Again, agree or disagree. My accounts receivable processing, focusing just on AR processes here, is automated and does not require employees to manually enter incoming checks or payments into the financial system. Talking about automation here, again, workflows, when specifically talking about accounts receivable, and here are the results for that. So pretty significant majority here, about 65% saying they disagreed, and about 35% there saying they agreed. When it comes to accounts receivable, they have some automation, and employees don't have to do this manual entry. So pretty interesting, Ben. One could surmise maybe that this is a newer trend that's being enabled by technology, automating these processes. Again, what do you think of these results when we talk about AR processes in particular?
Well, specifically, if I could turn to fundraising efforts as it relates to incoming checks and donations and things of that nature in the context of AR, much of that information that is on that check needs to be input into some type of database, some type of constituent relationship management technology. You've got Razor's Edge and many others that are out there that are very popular so that you can keep up with donor trends and information about constituents and fundraising. So just like admissions processing, it requires a manual keying of information. All that documentation is unstructured, so it just requires manual processes. So
sure. All right, thank you. Next statement here, again, agree or disagree. My institution has concerns about PCI compliance due to our manual processes. So, of course, PCI compliance, the payment card industry, security standards, that institutions, it's very important that they're compliant with those security standards. So asking here if those manual processes put that compliance in jeopardy, basically. And so here are the results here. Almost evenly split. A slim majority here saying they disagree. So their institution does not have concerns. Sounds like one could assume that they have their PCI compliance pretty well locked up. And then there's a pretty sizable percentage here, just under 50%, saying they agreed that this does concern them at their institution. Kind of touching on the security topic again, Ben, as we've noted, very important, but specifically PCI compliance here. It's almost evenly split between those where manual processes might jeopardize PCI compliance. What are your thoughts on this specifically, Ben?
Well, I would say that we're seeing trends of the PCI compliancy and audits and things of that nature to ensure that there's processes in place to lock down this information is becoming a bigger and bigger concern for most colleges and universities. So in particular, when you're talking about advancement and you're handling donor information, obviously it's imperative that that information is not compromised. So we've even seen in some advancement departments where people that are keying in information off of these checks and incoming financial records have screens where, you know, if you're standing next to the person, they're secure in a way and that you can't see confidential financial data. So there definitely is more emphasis being placed on this and ensuring success. So.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, and next statement here, agree or disagree. We talked a little about accounts receivable. Now this focuses on specifically AP, accounts payable. Our accounts payable processing is centralized and does not require employees to manually enter data and route invoices. So drilling down more specifically into accounts payable, here are the results for this one. So significant majority here disagreeing, just over 60% saying their AP processing is not centralized and of course does require employees to manually enter the data and route invoices. And then just under 40% saying that they agreed and they do have a centralized process. Ben, does this reflect what you're seeing with the institutions that you work with around the country?
It is. You know, it seems depending upon the institution, there may be different strategies for processing invoices. In some cases, you know, the invoices are ultimately entered into some type of financial line of business application in a central fashion. In others, you know, the invoices go to really separate remit-tos. Larger institutions could be hundreds and hundreds of remit-to addresses where those invoices ultimately are handled and keyed. But you know, the challenge is not only the keying of those invoices, the keying of them correctly, the manual component associated with keying in that information, but also the invoices have to be approved. So if the university's adopted some type of purchase order process where the vendor then puts the PO on the invoice, there's ways that, you know, those invoices can be quickly scanned, POs extracted, matched in the purchasing system, and then quickly paid. Many universities don't have that technology, so those invoices have to be routed, maybe manually by the mail or courier staff. Individuals have to sign off on those invoices. In some cases, you may see a physical stamp on the invoice with the date that the department received it, signature, maybe a general ledger code is handwritten on that invoice. So that time and length of period to route those invoices and get them approved and ultimately get keyed can be excessive, and the result ultimately is the payment to vendors late, which can result in late fees. So there's a lot of dysfunctionality around AP processing that most universities are facing with costs of late fees and the cost of keying.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Our next statement here. Agree or disagree, my institution has a clear understanding of the true cost to receive and process an invoice. I think that Ben was just touching on there. We have a couple statements up here about true costs. So here are the results for this one. Pretty similar percentages to our last one. A slight majority here, just over 50%. Saying they disagreed, so they don't have a clear understanding of the true costs when it comes to invoices, but then just over 40% saying they do understand true costs. So, Ben, this is touching on some of the things you were just saying there about routing invoices. I think you mentioned the risk of late fees and these more cumbersome manual processes. True cost kind of plays into that as well. What's your take on this in terms of the results, the institutions who understand that?
Well, I'd say that the people that say they disagree aren't alone. We find a significant amount of institutions are really not clear on exactly what their costs are. And third-party industry pundits out there that have written white papers on this will share that the cost of processing an invoice can be anywhere from $10 to north of $40 an invoice, depending upon how streamlined their process is and how efficient it is. So I can just tell you from our consulting engagements, if you just look at the cost of labor of an individual in the accounts payable department or in a decentralized department that's keying that invoice, is probably north of $4 per invoice just to physically key it into some type of financial line of business application. So it is expensive, and it is an area of opportunity for most universities.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. And we have another question after this, I believe, about true costs. But first, another agree or disagree. My institution leverages seasonal or student labor to meet the demands of fundraising. And Ben alluded to this earlier, talking about security, and that this can sometimes be a concern when you're leveraging seasonal or student labor. So we wanted to get an idea of how common it was to do this specifically around fundraising. So almost evenly split here, about 45, 48% or so saying that they do leverage seasonal or student labor, and then just over 50% saying they do not leverage student labor. So pretty interesting, almost evenly split there, Ben. What's your take on that? Again, you alluded to this earlier. I think when it came to security, could that be a factor here in this as well?
Yeah, it is, and whether that labor force needs to increase in terms of these fundraising campaigns is largely based on, the success and size of that university and its fundraising. So obviously a smaller university that maybe doesn't have as big of a donor base, may not be getting massive quantities of donations and checks and financial documents to process, and so this may be a non-issue. But in many institutions where the fundraising campaigns can be significant, there's this plethora of incoming financial documents need to be opened and data extracted and keyed. So to rely on temporary or student labor is really not ideal. Temporary labor, it's hard to really lock down the security, if you will, and really it's probably not the best idea to have students viewing checks and things of that nature that's coming in from the donor base.
Sure, okay. Thank you. And moving on here, getting back to true costs, my institution has a clear understanding of the true cost to collect advancement funds. So we talked about true cost to process an invoice, and again, Ben was just alluding to this. Collecting advancement funds can be costly. Let's see what the results are here. And this, I believe, was our only statement that was exactly evenly split, 50-50. So equal numbers of institutions saying they understand the true cost to collect those funds, and institutions saying they do not understand the true cost to collect those funds. So probably an important cost to consider, and one that a lot of institutions may not think about or consider that. Ben, what's your take on this one?
Well, I'd say obviously investment in the cost of staff to manage alumni relationships and fundraising, visioning for fundraising efforts is paramount for every university. The cost to manage advancement is clearly, largely in the staff that's managing that operation, and then there's investment costs and things of that nature. But the one thing that we're hearing from senior leadership in various organizations we're talking to is what tactical costs that are really not strategic can be mitigated out of these processes. And so that's when we look at the notion of manually keying information into a CRM, et cetera. Those are areas of opportunity that costs be reduced and money deployed by other fundraising efforts that are more strategic for the university and infrastructure and things of that nature. So that's the kind of thing we're hearing from clients.
Okay, sure. Sounds like sort of a hidden cost that people don't often think of. Okay, and let's see, we have one more here. Agree or disagree, my university is analyzing fundraising data in relationship to accounts receivable to improve the success of future campaigns. Data analysis, data analytics, very big in higher ed right now. When it comes to fundraising, let's see what the results are here. So a good majority here, almost 70%, about 65 to 68% or so, saying agree, yes, they do at their institution analyze that data to improve the success of future campaigns, and then just over 30% saying they disagree, that they don't analyze that data. So pretty interesting, Ben. Shows people are certainly taking this seriously, leveraging that data, making good use of it, but it seems like there's also opportunity here for some institutions that aren't. What do you think of these results here as well, Ben?
Yeah, I think we've seen a trend over the last few years of these bolt-on analytics tools. Some of them are inherent into the CRM technologies the universities are investing in, but to be able to data mine and find more information in the donor base just allows you to create more targeted marketing campaigns and fundraising campaigns that ultimately will lead to more success. So those that have not implemented these types of technology, I think probably will be on their radar in short order. The challenge for the institutions is many of these tools are very robust, but they're only as robust as the information that you can get into the data analytics engine. So how is that metadata captured from the information you have and input into the system? And that's where things can get clunky.
Okay, sure. Excellent. Well, that's through all of our survey data. I do hope you found that that part interesting. Now, we're looking at a lot of these issues, of course, through a survey at a pretty high level, somewhat abstract at that high level, and we thought it would be helpful or interesting for you to hear more of a practical boots on the ground perspective about what institutions have done around these challenges. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ben at this point to share some of these case studies of institutions that Ricoh has worked with, the results that they're seeing and addressing some of these challenges that we've looked at in the survey. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Ben.
Great, thanks, Kurt. So the first case study that I wanted to share with you all is really around invoicing. You see there's three different topics that we're going to speak to, invoicing admissions and mail operations. And the first case study I want to share with you is in regards to invoicing. So we had a four-year public university. It was in the Southeast. You can see, a little over 20,000 students. And they were basically struggling with their accounts payable process. The university had implemented an e-procurement technology that many on the phone has probably been made aware of or maybe even implemented, called SciQuest. And SideQuest, for those of you who are not familiar, is a very powerful e-procurement solution. And what this university wanted to do is integrate their AP workflow into that technology. So they were processing, you can see here, about 70,000 invoices a year. And what was interesting about their particular process is that you could see they were struggling. It was taking them a little over 3 weeks to process an invoice. And you can see there at the bottom of that stat there that in many cases it was taking them well over 30 days to process an invoice. So the costs were reasonably excessive. You see at $18 there. I mean, these costs we have seen higher. But what was interesting is, and they are a larger institution, I would say it's probably more common to see this, they had over 600 different remit-tos. So all of those invoices were coming in to hundreds and hundreds of different addresses throughout the university. So basically over 300 knowledge workers were touching those invoices, getting them to different layers to approve, and then ultimately they were decentralized, keying that invoice data into their line of business application. So Ricoh, essentially, the results of our engagement and project was we consulted with the organization to take over that document process. So really in a true kind of accounts payable BPO type engagement, we implemented the staff and the technology to operationalize that cost center, and the results was we were able to reduce invoice turnaround times to less than 48 hours. So the costs you can see there were greatly reduced as well. And you can see this, the automated AP service where I'm describing some of these services. One that was very interesting is back to this commentary on data analytics. You're only able to get as good out of the engine that you've bought with what information input. So where in many cases accounts payable staff or decentralized staff is only keying in a handful of information, general ledger code, an amount, a vendor. In the case of SideQuest, to get all of the data analytics reporting out of the engine, they were looking at extracting 20-plus metadata index fields out of the invoice to provide the reporting the university was looking for. So complex. There was even more information that needed to be keyed. So we automated all that. What's interesting in terms of the next step for the future of this partnership is the university has various different buying programs, consortiums, if you will, whether it's state contract, maybe U.S. communities, or some of these large GPOs that are out there. All that pricing is input into their e-procurement system. And what they want to be able to do is have Ricoh provide reports that shows, maybe a big pen on state contract is $1.10, and they want us to extract line level detail off that invoice to show them that they actually paid $1.27 and were inappropriately charged, for that commodity. So that's the next future of that relationship, is to bring that reporting really to even another level. So that is the case study on invoicing. The next case study I wanted to share with you is around admissions processing. So it's a large four-year private school in the southeast. They were having challenges essentially with seasonal labor demands. There was massive quantities of paper coming in through their admissions process, not as much electronic as they had hoped. What Ricoh did, working in conjunction with this organization, is we worked to put in a technology that could look at up to 64 different types of document types. They had a very robust international student population, so the amount of document types that they needed to track were extensive. And so Ricoh provided the technology and the staffing to look at the seasonal labor required, and we were able to greatly reduce not only the costs associated with admissions processing, but also the turnaround time for them to vet students. So a last piece I would share with you is many on the phone know that universities are often required to provide data associated with various types of information associated with their admissions process, with the average SAT score, average GPA. Many universities are struggling to report this information to some of the third-party institutions out there that are tracking this. And so we were able to also tighten that up for the university and create more robust reporting than they had been able to do in the past. So that is a case study on admissions. And then last, Kurt, I wanted to share just a brief case study on a university that is in the Northeast that was having challenges associated with running their mail operations. And I think many on the phone can probably have probably seen this or experienced this looking at their own mail operations. What we're seeing is that the incoming packages associated with students buying things online is swelling at double-digit rates annually. And so the mail center operations is running out of room and have little space associated with managing all of this influx of packages. The other problem associated with this is that the wait times for these packages, in addition to the room, are often excessive. And so you can see here, this particular organization had wait times sometimes that exceeded 20 minutes to pick up a package. So what Ricoh was able to do is redesign the mail center with our mail consulting services. We looked at a workflow where we changed incoming white correspondence mail, which is generally being placed in a traditional P.O. box on a university campus. Those P.O. boxes take up a lot of space as well. Problem for students is that they don't know if they got mail unless they walk physically over to the postal center and check their P.O. box. And those P.O. boxes are often unsecure because they're using combination locks. The students will often leave the P.O. box and the last number, remember their combination locker. So what Ricoh did is we put a process in place where we significantly reduced the amount of square footage needed to manage that white correspondence mail. You can see how we designed that, a different layout here from the screen. Wait times for packages dropped to less than a minute, and greatly improved the student experience. So that is the last case study I wanted to share with you. Kurt, at that, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ben. Very, very interesting. And yes, we're going to get to our Q&A portion here. First, a couple reminders. We did get some questions and comments asking about accessing the slides and the archive recording. And a quick reminder, everyone who registered will be getting a follow-up email with a link to the slides here. And you'll also be able to access, we'll have a link to the archive section of our website, our web seminars, where you can access the recording here as well. So don't worry about that. If you want to go back over it, share with anyone at your team. I know there was a lot of great information and some more specific data points in those case studies and things that might be of interest to other folks at your team. So don't worry about that. You'll have opportunity to do that. Also, another reminder here, if you do have a question about any of these issues that we're discussing here, just enter it in the Q&A box, bottom right-hand corner of your screen there, and we'll get to as many as we can. Thank you to everybody who's already asked some questions. We really appreciate it. Let's see, first one for you, Ben. Interesting question here, talking about workflows and specifically the student information system. It says, are institutions finding that they need to invest in third-party or homegrown workflow capabilities to integrate with their student information systems, or are they seeing sufficient workflow capabilities developed within their current SIS offerings? Interesting question there, Ben. When we're talking about workflow and business processes, are student information systems sufficient a lot of times, or is it more about finding new things that integrate with those with the SIS? Ben?
Well, I would say it's probably a combination of a couple different things. A lot of it really depends on where the university is. So some universities have some pretty sophisticated student information systems that have, integrated workflow technologies that help, really automate some of these processes. In some cases, those types of workflows are not sufficient, and so universities will look for outside consultants, much like Ricoh, to provide technologies that can work with those student information systems and make them better. The out-of-the-box, fully integrated workflow solutions that many of the student information systems provide, the challenge with that is that those workflow technologies only work with the student information system. So when you can look at some of the technologies that are out there that provide workflow against the backdrop of admissions, advancement, invoices, student onboarding, there are generic technologies that can solve a whole host of problems and work in conjunction with that student information system and solve many, many different problems, not just one with the student vetting process. So that's one thing I'd say. And others, quite frankly, we found some universities that are literally still working with paper. They have a folder system. Students send their information in paper form, and those documents are put into a physical folder, and students are being vetted in the information system, without an information system, rather through paper documents. So it just really depends on where the university is.
Okay, sure. Next, we have a specific question about the admissions case study I think you shared. They say, for that admissions case study, can you describe how Ricoh helped to get paper documents into electronic format? What was improved? How did you do that? Ben, I may be able to put it back on that slide here for you here. But yeah, do you happen to know, or if not specifically for this story, could you maybe talk in general about how Ricoh does that, getting paper documents, digitizing documents, basically?
Okay, yeah, I'm glad to. So, there's really a variety of different models that we help clients with. I think you saw the last case study was on running a mail center. So, Ricoh has a very large footprint of, managed services, on-site staffed mail centers all over the United States. And so in that particular capacity, when those pieces of mail for admissions come into the mailroom, our staff is able to open and extract and digitize that information right in the mail operation that we're managing. So we're able to get those transactional documents into the workflow much quicker rather than, routing those and couriering those through a manual process. So that's one way that we're able to increase speed is through opening and extracting earlier in the mail process. In some cases, universities have contracted with us to actually set up a physical lockbox. So instead of, mail for admissions coming in the general mail address, we set up a PO box with specificity to admissions, so that those documents are automatically separated, if you will, from all the other documents that are coming in the general mail operation. But whichever way that those are brought to us, whether they're through the mail center we're operating or through a PO box or a lockbox, we then can either provide the staff on site in the mail operation, or we have multiple locations all over the country that we have the ability to go pick up the mail from those lock boxes, and we have production centers that we can digitize those paper documents very quickly. The last leg of it is really where most of this technology in the university sector today is manually being keyed. What Ricoh does is we put software technologies into the process that we can intelligently grab information, extract it off of the document, and take that information and shove it into whatever line of business application is needed. If the software is not capable of grabbing that information, because no software will ever be 100% accurate, we have a fully vetted QC process where we would do a QC check and make sure that the information is correct. If not, we can manually override it and make sure it's correct. So essentially, moving the mail quicker upstream in the process and electronically grabbing information and routing in line of business applications, those are the key areas that we help. If that makes sense.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Next question says, some of these services sound like they displace some of my people or employees. What have you seen other schools do to retain these employees in other capacities? Ben, this is a kind of a common question that often comes up when we talk about efficiencies, finding ways to improve how we run the institution, streamlining things, making things more efficient. That may worry some people about eliminating jobs, essentially. What's your response to that? What have you seen schools do to retain employees in other capacities?
Well, it's understandable. That would be a natural progression when you look at these technologies. Certainly universities are looking at ways to, not only improve fundraising, improve their quality of students, improve the student experience, keep their student enrollment whole or maybe grow. So there's lots of room for strategic positions within the institution that these costs that are associated with these kind of mundane, tactical, keen processes, that staff can be reappropriated to something more strategic for the university. So there's many, many opportunities out there. The reality is that dollars spent on those strategic initiatives are much better spent than, on something that's very tactical in terms of metadata extracting. So that would be my thoughts on that.
Okay, great. And then another interesting question here for you, Ben, says, what software do you recommend for event tracking in higher ed? Are there specific databases used in the field? Thanks for your response. Ben, are you familiar with that, event tracking in higher ed and software for databases in that? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. The event tracking technology is generally, one of the modules that's inherent to a constituent relationship management tool, a CRM. So there's a vast quantity of different manufacturers of software technology that's out there that does that. So there's a couple, 3 or 4 that we see pretty commonly out there, but not difficult to find. There's plenty of them out there.
Okay. All right. Sure. And then there was, let's see, another question here asking just about in discussing the workflow challenges in those case studies that you profiled. Someone asked, what was Ricoh's role in those case studies? I think you gave a quick overview in those case studies, each of them having to do focusing on invoicing, admissions, and the mail center. But maybe you could give a quick overview of kind of what Ricoh offers institutions when it comes to each of those areas, Ben.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I would say that there's kind of really 2 core ways that we typically engage with the client, depending upon kind of where the culture is of their organization, tolerance to change, and things of that nature. So one way would be to really just automate the process and take it over on behalf of the university in a true kind of managed service process outsourcing concept. So, you get out of the document handling, the open, the extract, the routing, and really Ricoh just does it all. We invoice the client in kind of a consumption-based model where you pay a cost per X, whether it's admissions document or invoice or check received, and we manage that document process. So that's kind of, offering one, if you will, if you had to really kind of high level, separate what we do. The second would be, hey, I really don't want to outsource this in its entirety for whatever reason. I want to keep a closer handle on this with my own staff. How can you make me more productive? So in that capacity, Ricoh can bring in consultants from a consulting group that can identify the existing business document process, map it out, show the university what their total ownership operation is, and really build a better mousetrap. How, technology and make it better with your own existing staff. So those are really the two kind of systemic ways that we engage with clients, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ben. Well, it looks like we've gotten through all of our questions from our audience. So thank you so much to everyone who asked a question, and thanks for joining us today. I'm going to wrap things up here at this point. Of course, thank you to Ben Ruck from Ricoh for sharing your insights and expertise with us. Thank you again to our sponsor, Ricoh, for sponsoring our event today. And of course, to everyone in our audience, thank you so much for joining us. I do hope you found our seminar and discussion informative and useful to you here. Producing events like this one is just part of our mission at UB to inform college and university leaders like you about the latest news and trends in higher ed management. You'll find more coverage about issues such as the ones we discussed here in the pages of our print magazine, as well as on our website and in our free daily e-newsletter, UB Daily. And as I mentioned before, for those of you who would like to share this event with your colleagues, or if you want to go back over the presentation at your own pace, you can access it from our website by going to the URL on your screen here, where it will be posted in the archive section within about 48 hours. And if you'd like to download the slides, you'll find instructions and a link and a thank you email that you'll receive later on today. So keep an eye out for that, and you'll be able to access the presentation. So that is it for today's event. Once again, I'm Kurt Isley-Durley for University Business. On behalf of our producer, Ashley Morgan, and everyone on our production team, goodbye, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us.